Hello, my name is Helen, and it's a pleasure to present our paper, Social Media Adoption Among SMEs in the Developing World. The co-authors of this paper with me are Tom and Wangari. Before I continue, I just want to provide some background. So, some not too long ago, we were given a pot of money to try to understand how SMEs are using social media in developing countries. So we chose Nigeria and Kenya. And we found that among the enterprises surveyed, 63% of the owners were actively using social media, and 78% of the owners of these businesses were also actively using social media. In particular, in Kenya, we found out that 37% of the businesses surveyed had actually hired another staff who had social media skills to develop and manage their social media presence. So here is our outline for this presentation. I'm going to try to motivate our paper, provide literature review, talk about our hypotheses, really briefly chat about our survey design, present the model and the results, and then make some conclusions, and perhaps, if there's time, chat about further work. So here's our motivation. So according to the Pew Research Center, social media penetration is rising in developing countries, although it is still not as high compared to developed countries. In any case, when we look at Africa, apart from South Africa, social media penetration is relatively higher in Nigeria and Kenya compared to other countries, hence the reason for our sample. Our second motivation is that we had networks back in these countries to be able to carry out this type of research. Now, in terms of motivation, there's a lot of literature that looks at the value added of using social media by businesses, but there is a scarcity of literature on the factors that influence firms to choose to use social media in the first place. So we want to contribute to the literature on social media adoption by developing a framework that introduces the role of learning by doing as a factor that influences social media adoption by SMEs. So here is our literature review. So we define literature review according to Growell and Levy as content that is distributed through social interactions. And that's because from our conversations with these enterprises, they essentially have a presence on social media in order to expose their business, advertise, build connections with customers, which will hopefully convert to sales. Other literature within the marketing and technology field kind of look at how consumers or businesses are using social media. So in terms of developing a marketing strategy, communication strategy, improving customer service, how consumers are using social media to interact, brand awareness, innovation, and so on. When it comes to the Small Business Economics Journal, we find that SMEs essentially use social media because it's a relatively cheaper way to leverage their business activities. When there's a paper by Parilli and Elola, and they say that SMEs tend to innovate by learning by doing, using, and interaction, particularly when it is non-technological innovation. So as you can see, there's not much literature on social media adoption. So from what we have seen so far, social media can have benefits for companies or for SMEs. So to that extent, who is going to benefit from using social media more? Well, it's those that have knowledge. So if using social media benefits business, then using social media well will generate even more benefits. And those who know how to use social media well are the ones that are more likely to adopt social media. So this leads to our first two hypotheses. Because in order for you to develop knowledge of the platform and build your presence, you need to invest some time and some costs. So investing time and cost in producing social media presence is positively related to social media adoption. Hypothesis 2 is the more you know about social media, the more likely you will use social media. When it comes to organizational objectives, SMEs will adopt social media if their competitors are using social media and if their customers are already on social media. Therefore, if social media is key to a firm's strategy, a business strategy, then they are more likely to adopt social media. Looking at firm characteristics, we can see that we hypothesize that there's a negative relationship between the size of the firm and adoption of social media. So the smaller the size of the firm, the more likely they will want to develop technical competence in using social media in order to compete and get better knowledge of the market. So here is our survey design. Essentially, we surveyed 100 enterprises in Kenya and Nigeria, and that was limited to the funds we had. There were 31 questions, both qualitative and quantitative, and this is the basis for our empirical model. So you can see that most of the companies surveyed were small and medium in size. Most of them surveyed use social media to advertise a product or service. And when it comes to how much they know about using social media platforms, it's important to note that more than 60% of them can find out basic information like number of hits, followers, and likes. But fewer than 50% are less confident in using the analytics on these social media platforms to find out more in-depth information about how well their promotion is doing in terms of product ratings, sales levels, or revenues per customer. So here is our model. So based on our hypothesis, we are saying that the adoption of social media depends on knowledge, business strategy importance, frequency of use of social media, and the size of the firm. We used a binary regression model because our dependent variable, social media adoption, is a binary variable. So we have a question that says, do you use social media for selling purposes? And it was a Likert scale ranging from strongly disagree to strongly agree. Most people, it was either agree or disagree. So we have a binary choice. So our hypothesis tells us that the more you know, the more likely you will adopt social media. The more time you spend learning how to develop a social media presence, that's age, the more likely you will use social media. In terms of size of the firm, it's plus or minus. So minus, as I said before, because the size, a smaller firm is more likely to use social media for competitive purposes. But a larger firm might use social media more because they have economies of scale. So this slide essentially summarizes our key variables. So most of our firms are using social media to increase sales, have knowledge of intensive knowledge of social media, so they know how to use social media to find hits and likes and followers. And most of our businesses, as I said before, were small and medium size. In Kenya, most of the businesses surveyed were under 5 years old, whereas in Nigeria, they were between 6 to 10 years old. So initially, we ran a country-specific analysis. So one binomial regression for Kenya, another binomial regression for Nigeria. So what we have here is a binomial logistic regression, and these are the results. Beta are the coefficients, and the exponent of beta are the odds ratio. So we can see here that our hypotheses 1 and 2 are supported by our findings. So you can see here that for both Kenya and Nigeria, SMEs are more likely to use social media the more knowledge they have, and this is significant at the 10% level. The higher social media is ranked as a key business strategy, and this is significant at the 1% level. And the amount of time invested in learning how to use social media, and this is significant at the 5% level. When we compare the two countries, it seems that SMEs in Kenya are more likely to adopt social media than in Nigeria when we compare the odds ratio for these three variables. When we look at the firm characteristics, we find that in the case of Nigeria, the smaller the size of the firm, the more likely they will adopt social media. And older firms tend to adopt social media more than younger firms. We decided out of interest to include a square of the time variable in order to find out if there are efficiency gains for investing more time in learning how to use social media. So the more you know about social media, the less time you will spend on it. And we find that this is significant at the 5% level for Nigeria. Given that the results are broadly similar, we decided to pull the sample together. And in doing so, we did multi-collinearity test. We had to drop the square of our time variable because we had problems of multi-collinearity. These are the results of pulling the sample together. So as you can see, hypotheses 1 and 2 are again, and 3 are again confirmed by the whole sample. So you can see, looking at the coefficients, that there's a positive relationship between knowledge of social media, investment in learning to use social media, and the importance of social media as a business strategy to social media adoption. In other words, firms who have more knowledge, invest more time in learning to use social media, and rank it as a key business strategy are more likely to use social media. When we come to look at the firm characteristics, again we see that smaller firms are more likely to use social media than larger firms, and this is significant at the 1% level. We included a dummy variable for country, and what we see here is that SMEs in Nigeria are less likely to adopt social media than SMEs in Kenya. And I think we saw that when we did the country-specific regressions. Our model was found to be overall of a good fit. So on the one hand, you could argue that, okay, yes, the more frequently you use social media, or the more you invest time in using social media, the more you will adopt social media. But if you are already on social media, there's a chance that you will be using it more frequently. So there could be a sort of two-way causation between the dependent variable and our time variable here. So we decided to substitute our dependent variable and use another one called who uses social media. Is it the owner or is it hired staff? And again, we find that our hypotheses 1, 2, and 3 are also supported by the data. So the owners, so SMEs who have more knowledge rank social media as a key business strategy and invest more time in learning how to use social media. We find that the owners are more likely to use social media. Okay. Also, for smaller companies, the owners are more likely to use social media. So this kind of confirms the robustness of the results of our analysis. Thank you very much for listening to our presentation, and we look forward to questions. Take care.